I felt to bring this message today. I'm going to ask you to turn with me to Judges chapter 6, and we will look together at understanding and fulfilling the call of God. Understanding and fulfilling the call of God. There's a call of God on this church. There's a call of God on your life. Understanding and fulfilling the call of God. As I've traveled to over 35 nations, and we receive thousands of emails. The messages from our website. We have over 100,000 long downloads, over 30-minute downloads per month. And so I receive mail from all over the world, and so many asking questions about the calling of God. How do we find the calling of God, and how do we define it, and how do we develop it, and how do we renew it? When we speak of the call of God, we need a fresh reminder and revelation that it is universal. The call of God is not for a few people. Just in many Christians' mentality, the called ones or the calling. The only callings are if you're called to sing, or called to preach, or called to teach, or called to pastor, or one of the fivefold ministries. And we need to be reminded that every single person here this morning is called of God, as a calling of God to accomplish something that you are called to accomplish in every season of your life, in different seasons of your life. That Christianity is not a spectator sport. That we come as you to watch the ball game this afternoon. You don't come on Sunday to watch the callings of others, the singing, the worship, the preaching, the teaching, the leading, and give grades after, and give our scores after our evaluation. You're not an Olympic judge. You come here, and we are to equip you and to develop you in the development of your calling. Everyone, it's universal. Everyone is called, and every calling is unique. It's an incredible thought in scriptures that you are called to a divine purpose, ministry, service, impact, godly influence. What influence do you have? How do you influence people? Do you influence them for peace, for love, for forgiveness in your model of life, and in actual decisions of your life? Do you influence them towards Christ? Do you influence them towards reconciliation? Do you influence them towards passion for God? Every one of us are called to a divine purpose, ministry, service, impact, godly influence. No one can accomplish what you are called to accomplish. Every single person here, you have been designed, you have been wired, you have been gifted by God to fulfill a calling in every season of your life. Some callings and some aspect of your calling you'll do your whole life. But in every season, if your heart is open and seeking, there will be fresh ways that God would want to use you. Not always necessarily the way He used you 30 years ago. Everybody, every single person, and even the events of your life. Even what you think is so hard, the storms of your life, the battles of your life, the defeats of your life, the victories of your life are used by God to shape you and to fashion you for today's part of your calling. God has been working on you to bring you into the fulfillment, and no matter who you admire in the world, whenever you say, this is the man of God, it's the woman of God I admire so much, whoever you admire the most, that man, that woman cannot, with all their giftings and impact, cannot accomplish your calling. What you are called to do, the people you are called to touch, the people you are called to influence and to model Christ to. No one else but you can do it. Lean over to somebody next to you and say, don't even try to do what I'm called to do. To say that to somebody next to you. It's universal and it's unique and it's unending. It's unending. There's no retirement in the calling of God. I thought there would be more than two people saying amen to that. There's no retirement in God's calling. Every time I come to the Springs, or this morning when lots of times it's around the world, but sitting beside Nikki Cruz, just over 50 years of ministry. In the last year, I was so blessed to be able to just make contacts for a whole tour of France. I'm French. French world is my passion. And Nikki and the team went throughout France. I was getting emails. The French were forgetting the time change. So I was getting 6-hour difference. I was getting getting emails in the middle of the night about the services all the way through France after 50 years of ministry. Now, I think Nikki's 52. He started ministry at age 2, so he's only 52. But after 50 years of ministry, if you need to be reminded, and I also want to say this to the Springs Church people, when you see this man coming through, I hope you are reminded to pray for him and to stand with him wherever he goes around the world facing the devil himself. God gave him in France thousands and thousands of souls and impact. It's unending. Say to somebody next to you, no retirement for you. Come on, say that to somebody next to you. It's unending. There's no retirement in God's calling. It's never too late. There's no too late in God's calling. It's never too much happened in God's calling. It's never, I blew it, they blew it, we blew it, it's over. It's not recuperable in God's calling. It's never, we've lost too much. Look how much we've lost. We've lost too much in God's calling. Never. It's never static. It's never stuck in yesterday. It's renewed and often in different ways in every season of our lives. And we will look today at three simple principles, three simple kingdom laws, three dynamics from the life of Gideon and the calling of God in understanding and fulfilling the call of God. I believe that the enemy has come in like a flood over many of your lives and over the church corporately to try to abort the calling of God, the destiny and calling of God. But I am declaring this morning a morning of revelation, a morning of pushing back darkness, a morning of truth exploding and dissipating the lies, and of light shining, dissipating the darkness. I declare this morning a morning of defeat for the kingdom of hell and a victory for Jesus. Would you please say yes? If you look at Judges chapter 6, and in the first 6 verses, you have the context of the call, where God would call Gideon. And it's a context where the hand, in verse 1 and 2, we read it last week, and you read it at home. But in verse 1 and 2, it speaks of the hand of the enemy was heavy against God's people. There was an enemy's hand. And many of you have felt that way. There are seasons. We are every day of our lives in a battle, not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and heavenly, and darkness in heavenly places. But there are seasons when you feel like the enemy has come against you, against your marriage, against your children, against your call of God, against your health, against your mental health, against your own life, your ministry, your serving, your vision. Or the enemy has come against us corporately as a church in a hellish, desperate attempt to bring down the calling of God in our lives. The hand of the enemy was heavy against them in Judges 6. And the Bible says that they came against them to steal and destroy everything that they had sown. In verse 3-4, it says that everything they would sow, and as the crop, as the harvest would begin to grow, the enemy would come and steal what they had sown as it was coming up. It is those seasons in our lives where you feel, I thought we were going somewhere. We had begun to build this in your own personal life. I thought this addiction, I had finally overcome it. I thought things were better for my son. I thought as a church, I thought we had sown this and harvest was coming, and the enemy seems to come in and steals it as even it was coming up. That's the context of the call. It was a context where the enemy encamped against them. Literally in the Hebrew, that's all they could see. The enemy was in their face. If you look at the Hebrew word, it's as if the face was surrounding their faces. It's literally those moments where the enemy would make us blind to what God has done. They were blinded. All they could see, all you see is the problem. All you see is what was lost. All you see is what disappointed you. All you see is what you think is wrong. All you see is what the enemy seemed to be gaining. The enemy was encamped against them. That's all they could see. They were blinded to God's faithfulness. Blinded. Couldn't see it. to God's promises, so much greater than anything they're going through. They were blinded to their own responsibilities in their demise. They were blinded to their own sin, their own involvement, the things God had wanted to change in them for so long that they had resisted and had brought this again. They were blinded. They were hardening themselves and blinded. There was an army of 135,000 men, Judges 8 tells us, terrifying them and impoverishing them to a point where the things that should seem so taken for granted before were now impossible, seem out of reach, or will never be possible again. The text says in Judges 6, they were in caves threshing wheat. Their whole lives, the most normal, like breathing, was to thresh. You thresh wheat in the open air, in an open field where the wind would come and help separate the wheat from the chaff. But now they are condemned. They are reduced to threshing wheat in a cave. It's those moments, it's those thoughts sometimes that the enemy would put in your mind and in your spirit, thinking in terms of things that, will I even smile again? Would it even be possible for me to walk again in fulfilling God's call? There was a day where my breath was filled with hope and confidence and expectation. Would that ever even be possible again? That's the context in which the call of God come. The people of Israel, God's people, had been in a cycle that's very real for us today in October 2015 at the Springs Church. It was a cycle of disobedience that led to disaster. But then they called on God and for deliverance and for their destiny and their calling to be restored. It was a cycle of disobedience. They did evil before the Lord. They had been called. They had been called to be the light of the nations. They had been called to shine. They had been called to be a people that would shine to the nations, that the nations would look at them and see them so different, so brilliant. They had been called to be an extraordinary people, God's people. They had been called as we to be so different that at the way that people in this, God's people love one another, are mature with one another, are forgiving of one another, are generous, are filled with hope and strength and freedom and worship, that they would be, the nations would look at them and say, who is their God? But they had begun to copy, to look at the nations around them, to look at the ways of men around them. I'll say this, we can apply this, of course, to secular things and to sinful things. But I will say this, as a church leadership, we can end up looking around at this style or this method or this thing. They've been looking around and start to copy things around. And please get this, what you copy will capture you. What you copy will capture you. So disaster comes and Gideon is literally in a place, and the Hebrew word is of the location is literally translated a hiding place, a name meaning desert, dry place, the place of dust. They do evil in the sight of the Lord. They don't listen to His voice. They suffer, and then they suffer so much. They were so impoverished that they called on God. It's a modern version would be, this is what I would call this is what we would see today as the call from the police station. Some of you have lived it. You were young, you messed up and you had to call your parents from the police station. I did this when I was too many times. My poor mother had to come and get me. And sometimes she wanted them to keep me. Or you've lived it, and I've also lived it, you've lived it as a parent. It's that moment where, the call from the police station, when you have to call, you have to call the person that set the rule, set the warning, set life before you, whose rule you broke, and then you're calling to bail you out. Dad, I did exactly what you told me not to do, and now what you told me would happen if I didn't listen has exactly happened, so now I need you to get me out of this. The whole nation is on the phone. The whole nation is saying, oh God, we'll never do it again. Right, guys? Right? We'll never. Get us out of here, please. It's the call from the police station. And one thing, if you remember one thing from this message, one thing so important for you to hear and never forget this morning. Do you know what has been and what will always be God's response when we call on Him, even after we've been in that cycle again and again, disobedience, disaster? Do you know what His response is? He always takes us back. He always says, yes, I'll come to you. You call. Oh, some of you should applaud because this is the best news for you. He loves us so much, and sometimes He loves us too much to allow us to escape some of the consequences of our stupid mistakes, our stubbornness, our disobedience, the patterns we've allowed over and over to take over. He will allow us to experience some of the consequences so we can change and learn and grow and recapture and re-enter the path, walk the path again of the fulfillment of a call. He will take us back that we would understand and fulfill our call. 3 key principles, dynamics, and understanding and fulfilling the call of God this morning from Judges chapter 6. The perspective and response of our calling, the present tense and release of our calling, and the Prince of Peace and the renewing of our calling. I want you, with a big smile, to say to somebody next to you, your calling is calling. Say that to someone, your calling is calling. Gideon is an anti-hero. He's a hero who doesn't think of himself as one, like us. He's a hero who will question God and doubt so totally his calling. A hero who comes from so far, so deep, and seems to be going nowhere so fast. A hero like all of us at one point or another in our lives, or even this morning, a hero in need of a fresh perspective that he would respond in his calling. So we look together in the Word at Judges chapter 6. And if we read from Judges chapter 6, reading from verse 11. Now the angel of the Lord came out and sat under the terebinth tree, which was in Oprah. This is Oprah before television, which belonged to Judah, while his son Gideon threshed wheat in the winepress, in the caves, in order to hide from the enemy. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, the Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor. But Gideon said to him, oh my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why? Why then has all this happened to us? And where? Why? Where? Where are all his miracles, which our fathers told us about, the miracles of the past, saying, did not the Lord bring us out from Egypt? But now the Lord is believing a lie. He's believing a lie. Now the Lord has forsaken us, and He's left us to our enemy, delivered us into the hands of our enemy. Absolute lie. Then the Lord turned to him and said, go in this might of yours. Go in the strength that you have. And you shall deliver and save Israel from the hand of the enemy, the Midianites. Have I not sent you? Have I not sent you? When the Lord begins to restore us to the understanding and fulfillment of our calling, He has to change. He has to bring us to a place where He changes and transforms. He wants us to begin to look at ourselves as He sees us. There's something so deep in Gideon when the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, the Lord is with you, mighty man of valor. Most of us on the way to church this morning are after, in your house somewhere, the angel of the Lord appeared and said, I'm with you, the Lord is with you, mighty man, mighty woman of valor. Many of us say, okay. But Gideon his doubt is so deep, his pain is so real, his questioning is so intense that he won't even pretend, he won't even fake it. He's coming out with something that has been in the heart at one point or another of any man or woman of God through the ages. He's saying, oh yeah? I mean, this is before God. Oh yeah? The Lord is with you, mighty man of valor. Yeah? Well, why? Why has this been allowed to happen? Why are we in this state? Why did we lose so much? Why and where? Where are the miracles of yesterday? It seems so miraculous for our fathers, the stories they tell. But we hear today, why? Where? And he's so encamped in the lie. And he's seeing himself as abandoned by God and left to his enemy, which raises a good question. Where do we get our image of ourselves? Where do we get what we think of ourselves? Our perspective of ourselves. We get it from our childhood. We get it from where we were from. I'm from 4 generations of alcoholic, violent men, and words and wombs and things were there was an impression over us that spoke to us what the limitations and smallness of what we would be. It can come from your childhood. It can come from people that you open your heart to. It comes from our background. It comes sometimes from the devil himself in his worst, ugliest, devilish, demonic, destructive lies can speak even through Christians. That believers speak words over you, speak word over your ministry, speak word over the church, speak word over your family. You got all these voices, all these perceptions, and Gideon is in a place where most of us wouldn't dare. Some of us grew up in the faith. When the gospel we knew, you wouldn't even think of saying something like that to God. Where? How come? Where? And He responds to all of God's call and grace and love and potentiality with this hurt and this unbelief. And we're thinking, what is God going to answer him? What's the Lord's answer to that? Verse 13, sorry, you're right, wrong place, wrong person. I will go find someone else in Colorado Springs. I will reprogram my GPS to the address Mr. Spotless Record 777 Perfection Road. No. God says, no, you're a mighty man of valor. You see, there's great danger in thinking of yourself higher than you ought to, but there's equal danger in thinking of yourself less than God calls you to be and to be. Equal danger. Equal. When I was beginning in the ministry, my whole life is French. I learned English as a second language. I rarely preach in English even these days, but when I learned English, I remember going to preach in churches, and I was very young, very impressionable, and there was a pastor, and I never had the courage to tell him to his face, but I'm saying it today, so maybe you'll see this video. But I was just a young guy, and I came in, and there was expressions in English I never heard in French. There was no equivalent. Like this pastor would always, it was very critical of everybody. He had such a negative outlook, and it was always, I would talk about this church, blah, 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 and this man, and this pastor, and this school, and this, and this, and this. Because of my background, it made me think, I wonder what he says when I'm not around, what he says about me. But he would have this saying that I never heard. There was no equivalent in French. He used to say, I call it like I see it. I call it like I see it. I call it like I see it. You see, I call it like I see it. There was no French for that. I call it like I see it. And after a while, just very little while, it just hit me so strongly, and I feel like telling him today, what a lousy way to live. What a lousy way. I call it like I see it. Don't call it like you see it. Call it like God calls it, like God promises it, like God can breathe it in your heart with the eyes of faith. Someone should say yes. A new perspective in his response. The Lord turned to him and said, go with the strength that you have, and you shall deliver your people from the enemy. Have I not sent you? Here's our first key principle. Our calling is not passive, it is active. The calling is not passive, it is active. God says, activate. Go in the strength you have now. Activate what you have in me. Activate what I have done for you. Activate what you know of me. Activate who I am to you. Activate my love. Activate my spirit in you. Activate my forgiveness. Activate my faith. Say amen anytime you like. Activate me in you. Go in the strength I will give you today. Not the strength you thought you had one day, or the strength maybe I'll have when revival comes. Today at the Spring Church, we can activate what God has put in our, go in the strength I'm sending you. God is saying, God, not activate in the sense of works or human efforts or legalistic routines or human promises. I'm promised God, capacities or abilities or religious determination, self-righteousness or self-realization. No, Gideon, you're a mighty man of valor, not of what you've done, on what you've done, on what I've done, not on what you are, what I am, not on your capacity, but my strength in you, not on yesterday or tomorrow. Go today in the strength that you have. Love today. Stand today. Pray today. Forgive today. Grab somebody's hand today and say, my God, today you're sending us. And we will say yes. Someone say yes, please. Today, it's not passive. It's not passive. It is active. It's not, you go today in the strength. Many Christians are waiting for what they are dreaming for or what they thought should happen, or what they thought they had planned would happen. But God calls us to activate who He is in us now. A few years ago, I was preaching, I've been in 35 nations, but I was preaching in Papeete, Tahiti, not Haiti. I go to Haiti a lot, but this is Tahiti. This is in the middle of the Pacific. You go to LA, and then you do like 16 hours to get there to the little island in the middle of the Pacific. So I was doing pastors' conferences, and they came from like 50 islands around, and I'm there a whole week preaching morning, afternoon, and night. And I said the last day, I finished at noon. I'm beginning to pack to leave that night, and it's like a Wednesday. I'm only going to get home Friday, and I got a big weekend in Montreal. And as I started to look all over the place, started to panic. I couldn't find my passport. I lost my passport. I've traveled all over the world, never lose my passport, but I lost my passport. I started to panic, and I'm just, what am I going to do? My passport. This is who I am. My passport. I can't. So I went upstairs. I was staying in the basement of the pastor's house. I went upstairs, and the Tahitian people are wonderful. They're beautiful, but they're very laid back. They live in the island. They have beaches all around. They're very, very laid back, very cool. So I said, hey, I think I lost my passport. They said something like, that doesn't matter, man. You stay with us longer. So I said, well, has this ever happened before? They said, yes, there was a diplomat, and he lost his passport. We went to the authorities, and he got it back. I said, how long? They said 2-3 weeks. I was just, no. So I'm downstairs, and I'm starting now. You go from panic to just doing stupid things. I'm redoing my steps. I'm looking everywhere, even places that it doesn't make any sense. You're not going to find it in the tube of the toothpaste. But I'm still looking. I'm looking everywhere, and I'm getting angry, and I'm throwing things around. I'm like, come on. I'm going one shirt up. Oh, don't look at me that way. You're the same. You've done this. I'm like, what am I going to do? Come on. So there was a bag. There was just like a sports bag that they had lent me because we had done some hiking. So I just grabbed the bag, and as I threw it away in rage and anger, what am I going to do? I just felt something through my finger. There was like 2-3 pockets, and I opened 2-3 pockets, and my passport was there. My passport was there. It was so amazing. Some of you say, what are you telling us? No reason. I was just happy to have my passport back. No, listen to this. There's a point to this. Losing my passport in Tahiti, I had momentarily lost sight of what gives me access to the resources of my citizenship. I'm going to have to wait till it gets to the last row. This is what God says to me. This is what God says to us. This is what God says to the Springs Church right now, October 2015. Go in the strength you have now. It's not passive, it's active. You can pray now. You can love now. You can access my forgiveness now. You can access my presence now. You can access my grace now. Gideon, go in the strength that you have. I am sending you. And all the Gideons say amen, please. And give Jesus an ovation for what He can do through us. It's not passive. Understanding and fulfilling the call of God, it's not passive, it's active. The perspective and response of our calling, and then the present tense and release of our calling. Our calling is not in the past or in the future, it's in the present. Present, not passive, active, not in the past or in the future, in the present. In the verse 16, so he said to him, oh my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan or my family or my tribe is the weakest. I'm the weakest, I'm the least and the weakest clan in my father's house. And the Lord said to him, surely I will be with you. The question is, will you be with me? Will you come with me? Our calling is not in the past or in the present. Gideon could not walk, could not develop, could not get out of this darkness as long as he had his eyes on the miracles of the past and also what seemed to him the impossibilities of the future. When God Himself calls him, Gideon's responses, rationalizations, and dangerous opposing to God's calling, he says, I can't do it. I'm too weak. We're too weak. We're too small now. Look how many we've lost. Look how small we have become. Look how we were going and then it went down. Look at the crop that we had brought up and they came and stole it. Where are the miracles and breakthroughs of yesterday? He's stuck and blinded in the yesterday. It's seen so miraculous and easy for our fathers. How can I deliver? How can I be a hero? How can I fulfill the call? How can I believe for tomorrow because of what happened yesterday? But God says, I will be with you today. The call of God is not passive, it's active, and it's not in the past or in the future. And one, it's in the now. It's right now. Because there's many reasons, but one reason is we have a human tendency to magnify the past and the future. That's Christian folklore. Many of us, you know what he said? Oh, where are the miracles of our Father that we were told about? Who is he talking about? Is he talking about Abraham? Is he talking about Moses? They had great miracles, but they had insane battles, insane opposition. It wasn't anything else of what the psalmist described. We went through fire. We went through Psalm 65. We went through fire. We went through floods. The enemy came over our heads and we almost drowned, but he pulled us out and he brought us out for rich abundance. That's the testimony. Let me do a survey here. How many of you can say honestly, and this is time to give glory to God, God has done great things in my past? Say yes, please. But how many of you would be honest and say, and just be reminded, God did great things, but it was through great battles. Great valleys, great fires, great storm. Don't glorify the past as if it was all roses. No. God was there and they went through battle. And we also have a tendency to always think the future is going to be so much better. In my nation, in Quebec and in France, and many French countries of the world, they have a revival mentality where one day revival will come. And when revival comes, we don't have to change, do anything. It'll just happen. One day. I want to give you a news flash. Don't wait for revival. You are living in 2015 in the season of time in history when there's the greatest outpouring of the Holy Spirit on the earth. Say yes. God is already doing it. He doesn't have to change. He doesn't have to be convinced or change. We need to change. We need to get to the place of our hearts being what they need to be in our lives, so that today, not yesterday, not thank God for what He did yesterday, thank God for what He'll do tomorrow, but I'm here today, and we need a move of God here. I need here today that it's not passive, it's active. It's not in the past or in the future. We have this on the human level, we have this tendency of always think that the next step's going to be so, this is steps of life. Yeah, I saw all the little kids running around. When you're a little boy, 2-3 years old, a lot of kids, what they dream of? When can I go to school? I want to go to school. I want to go to school. Mom, let me go to school. I want to go to school. What happens when they go to school? I can't wait to be out of school. I can't wait. Oh, come on. This is throughout. In church, I've been pastoring 30 years, single people in church. Oh, I want to be married. Oh, if I can only be married. Where is it? Where is she? Where is she? You're listening to the preacher, but you're worshiping God, showing you have no ring. You're doing all kinds of things. It's that type of worship. It's a proclamation worship. Oh, I want to be single. I want to be married. I want to be married. Come on, when you're married, oof, I wish I was single. Sometimes, just sometimes. People, when I want to have kids in the house, I want my house filled with kids. Oh, to have kids in my house. What happens when you have them? I can't wait till they're out of the house. When they're going to be out of the house? He's 27, he's still there. When is he going to be out of the house? Oh, I'm talking to men and women for a second. Men that spend their life dreaming of my retirement one day. Retirement. I know a lot of guys. I'm 53. I know a lot of guys that have turned 60, prepared their whole life to be able to retire. And the week after their retirement, it's 7:45 in the morning. They're sitting. They don't know where to go, what to do. There's no retirement. Not yesterday, not tomorrow. Today, I'm going to serve. Today, I'm going to see God move in my life. Say yes, please. God said, today I'll be with you. I am with you. I will go with you. Will you go with me? And this is a kingdom principle. If you seize this, in your worst seasons, in the seasons of your worst pain, the reason why we have to activate today is because tomorrow begins today. And the restoration of great things for tomorrow depends on your release and response today. And because yesterday and tomorrow cannot seize the victories, God is calling us in His calling to lay hold of today. I can't go into the details publicly and on the internet, but after 30 some years of pastoring, we've had a lot of battles in 30 some years, and I think you've seen it all and you've been through. You take our shirts off spiritually, we're covered with all kinds of battle scars. But the year 2015, 22 years pastor of our church in Montreal, pioneered with 40 people and been there 22 years. So we've seen a lot of things, been through a lot. But I have to say to you that the year 2015 so far, a few months left, has been the year of height of paradoxes in my whole, our worst year in ministry, and in some ways, some of the most glorious breakthrough. We'll baptize over 300 people through the year, and God gave us all kinds of breakthroughs in ways. But the year started with death, with the death of one of our pastors. His wife found him at 40 years old. That's so many things that were surrounding that were so dreadful, so sad, such a weeping and such a suffering, and through the year, one after the other, and many people on staff, and sickness and different things, and all the way to last week. We're on Friday night 2 weeks ago, when we're going through the years coming out of the storms of the spring, and then people are being saved, and we're planting churches, and churches are growing, and man, God is doing something amazing. And last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, we have a Friday night, 500 young adults were there for our service. Over 100 people came forward that were there for the first time to give their lives to the Lord. And as the service was beginning, 13-year-old girl ran across the street right in front of the church to come to church. And she's so excited because she has a Christian mother, and the dad is not a Christian, and it was such a battle in the house, and they're praying all week so she can come to church, have permission to come. And she comes and runs across the street. It runs over and killed in front of our church on a Friday night when the service started. I came through where I was, and I walked on the premises. There's a police perimeter, and the next day the media, the television, the helicopter, everything else all around us. How come the pressure, the funeral, the mourning, and you're going through and going through that storm. And that type of year, that type of moment, that type of Gideon season where he says, where and why and how come? If you and that place in your life, if we in that place in our lives allow ourselves to be filled with Him and to look to Him and to say, you're saying you're coming with me, I'm going with you. God will use you in that place for the miraculous and for the greatest breakthrough. Say yes. This is not just a thing for pastors and preachers. This is for everyone. A picture's going to be on the screen of one of our elders who's been with us since the beginning. Last summer, we took this picture. He took our wife and I. He's a man who has a business and very successful, but amazingly generous, a man of prayer, man. Him and his wife have been elders and pillars of our church, and they took us, our wife and I, to a helicopter tour last summer. And we look at that, and we took that picture. We think this man on the left, he's not a care in the world. He's got his family, his business is booming. He's so happy. And he didn't know that a few months later he would go for his annual at the doctor's, and he's gone every year, and everything was fine. A year ago they didn't see anything, but they went, and every time I look at that picture, we didn't know that he had a tumor. He had a tumor that enveloping sarcoma cancer over his kidney. That they said that as soon as he went, they said the next day we started chemo, and they were talking about 10 to 20% chance of survival. All of a sudden, everything spins out of control. And while he was going through his chemo, came in my office, and we prayed together, and he starts the chemo to operate. They're going to operate. They're going to open him up. They're going to take out one kidney and try to scrape off the cancer from every organ. His whole life is spinning. And during that time, in the beginning of this year, we're going through the storm at the church, and we're going through the funerals, and we're going through the death of this man and everything else that came with it. It was and we're both just spinning. And in 2014 and the years before, the last 5 to 10 years, we had been serving, and many of the mercy ministry we're doing. One thing we were doing more and more is taking care of the kids that are in the system, that from 11 to 17 years old, that have been beaten, have been raped, have been abandoned by their family, have been violated, and they go into these. We started visiting the government centers, and they were worse than the prisons. So we started helping, and what broke our hearts is we would take care of them from age 12 to 18, visiting them all that, and when they came out at 18, there was nowhere for them to go. So the street gangs would get them, and the girls end up prostitutes or sent to strip joints and all that insanity. So in 2014, we said, 2015, we're starting a ministry. We're going to have a little house for them so they can come. We thought some little storefront, whatever it is. And when the year started, all this mess, all this spinning, and this man, this elder calls me, and he says, hey, one of my business friends called me and said there's this amazing building on our street right in the worst neighborhood, and it was built just a few years ago. It's brand new. It's got apartments. It's got kitchens. It's got offices. It's got everything. And it's evaluated at over $2 million. But I think my friend says we can get it for under $1 million. So let's just buy it. We'll flip it, resell it, and make money. So he's in his cancer. We're in funerals and death and mourning. But his heart is still thinking. His heart is saying, even in this, God can use me. So he says, Pastor, can we go take a look at it? He says to his friend, please let me have the building. We'll not flip it. I want to use it for something else. His friend says, oh, it's for one of your God things? He said, yeah, it's for. So he says, tell God that I was in on it. I helped you with it so he can help me too. So we went, and when we got to the street corner, he didn't know what was happening to me. We got, and he's in his chemo and everything else. And we get to the street corner, and I got funerals, and when I got there, I started weeping. Because that very street corner, I've driven, that corner, not another street, corner, Chemin Chambly and Dubuc, 2 streets. On that corner, we're going to see a picture of the building. On the street corner is this building, and this is a corner that for years and years, every morning, afternoon, and night, I would drive at 5 on my way to church in the morning. I would drive in the afternoon or night. There are prostitutes on the corners. I've seen teenage prostitutes there. I've seen mothers with their baby in a crib and hooking on the street with the baby. There's baby right beside them. And I've prayed 1,000 times, oh God, someday we got to do something. And 2 ladies from our church that have been through their own storms would go and witness to these ladies, and they would go on that street corner. It was just an empty lot. They would go on that street corner, and they would say, God, give us something. One day you'll give us something. They thought some little building, but every prayer was heard. We bought the building. We renovated the building, and it's called, you're going to see the next slide, please. The address is 2159, and our logo says that where hope has found an address. The next picture, hey. Next picture, look in the back, inauguration, the mayor of the city is there, everybody's there. Behind is my friend, he had his operation, they took his kidney out, he's cancer free, there's no cancer, he's in health. Oh, come on. What could God do through us in the midst of our storm if we stood today and say, God, you're going to change this storm into a story for your glory. Say yes, please, and give him praise as we close. Lastly, perspective and response of our calling. Calling is not passive, it's active, present tense and release of our calling. It's not in the past or in the future, it's in the present. And the Prince of Peace and the renewing of our calling. Please understand that Apostle Paul says that these texts, these pictures in the Old Testament, all these things happened to them in the Old Testament as our examples. To teach us as they were written for our understanding and our instruction upon which the ends of the age have come. It's not passive, it's active. It's not in the past or in the future, it's in the present. And here's the last thought you have to let it fill your spirit. The understanding and fulfillment of God's calling is not natural, it's supernatural. It's not in our own strength. It's not in our own methodologies or capacities or wills and plans and provisions and ambitions. It's supernatural as we are in communion with Jehovah Shalom, the Prince of Peace. Last week, Adam preached it, and you can look at it at home. It's very particular. But in this picture we have in Judges 6, the Lord calls him, mighty man of valor, where are the miracles? I am with you. Now activate. Don't look to the past or the future. Go now in the strength that you have. I shall be with you. Will you be with me? And then there's something that almost looks out of place if you don't get it. Then Gideon says, okay, he says, Lord, show me a sign that it's really you. I'm going to go do something and wait for me. He says, literally, he says, do not depart from here. He says that to the angel of the Lord in verse 17 and 18. I pray until I come to you and bring out my offering set before you. I'm going to go do a sacrifice and I'll come back. And the Lord said, I will wait until you come back. I'm here to say to someone, it's important. The amazing mercy and patience of God. He says to someone today, I've been waiting, but I will wait till you come back. I've been waiting till you come back from your murmuring and your criticism and your unforgiveness and I've been waiting, but I'll be back. I'll be there when you come back. I'm asking you to come back. When you're going into things that away from my will and you go, but I'll be back. And Gideon goes and he prepares a sacrifice. You can read the text. He prepares the animal. He prepares the fruit of the vine, and then he prepares the offering that is the unleavened bread. He prepares an offering of unleavened bread, an animal that is offered, and the fruit of the wine and of the vine, and then the sacrifice is accepted by heaven. The fire comes from heaven. Heaven accepts the sacrifice. And Gideon falls on his face and he says, now I know. I've seen God face to face. And he built an altar there and he called it Jehovah Shalom. The Lord is my Prince of Peace. Please understand, this is a prophetic picture. In the midst of the calling of God, there is, like many times in the Old Testament, theophany, Christophany, many times in the Old Testament, there's an announcement that God would come and offer his son, the sacrifice, the offering of unleavened bread, and the body and the blood that would be shed, that would be offered to heaven. Heaven would accept the sacrifice, and the Prince of Peace would die for the sins of all and would rise again. And now every believer has access to the supernatural peace and resources that only will make you able to fulfill the call of God on your life. It's for a person. It's for a Christian. It's for the church. It's for the church today. It's for our church. The Bible says that as the offering and as he declares Jehovah Shalom in a few verses later, 34 and 35, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew the trumpet, and all the men gathered behind him. There was a peace that came to Gideon that was so supernatural that he was able to appease himself and to receive a direction. All the men are terrified around him, and he's terrified himself. But as he's on his face before Jehovah Shalom, my Prince of Peace, supernatural peace comes. Spirit of the Lord's upon him. Supernatural peace, direction, leadership, supernatural choices, supernatural decisions. So I call every believer in this church. I call every elder. I call every leader. I call every pastor of this church in the season that is ahead of us, so crucial in determining our destiny, that we would understand that it is not by our own strength, but it is by His Spirit. That there's no provision or protection without prayer. That there's no testimony for God until we call on God. There's no stories for God until we call on God together. Every man, every church leader, every person that has been through brokenness and hurt and torn up, bringing the torn pieces to God like Gideon did, that the Prince of Peace would appease us. I call every Christian leader to model forgiveness, to model releasing of the hurts in the past, and to model it that would start with the head, husband, wives, leaders, coming down to the whole church. This summer I was preaching, as the musicians come, I was preaching in Times Square Church, and it was a 1 year anniversary of my daughter's wedding with her husband, and we took them to New York. So after, we went visiting some sites with them, and we went to Ground Zero, and I'd been there before since September 11, but there's new things that had been, there's a museum, in-ground museum that has been built, and it was very, very moving. It's quite impressive, because you go down, and you are down way below, and the guide tells us that there are 3,000 bodies under our feet, all around us. And they have pieces of the actual buildings and everything. We're right there. They have a museum there. And one of the things that was so moving to me is they have this huge wall. The picture is going to happen. Is going to be on the screen with me with the flag. They call it the Freedom Flag. There's a huge flag there at the basement of Ground Zero. And he looks all torn up. And when you look up close, and there was a plaque explaining. I was blown away, and I asked my wife, take a picture of me. Of course, my wife says, can you never stop thinking of a sermon, just live the moment? But this is what I do. So I was there, and I said, no, take the picture, because it's a freedom flag. And when I read how it was made, I was so amazed. It was put together from hundreds of pieces of deactivated flags. Whenever they put a flag in front of a building, here or abroad, government building, anything that's governmental, when it's torn because there was a bombing or fires or earthquake or terrorist attacks or hurricanes or tsunamis or floodings, the flag is deactivated. And somebody thought, and they had the piece of the flag that was actually there on September 11. So somebody thought, we're going to gather these pieces of deactivated flags and put them together as a flag that they call the flag of freedom and faith and liberty. Now, there's many things I love about Americans, and I wish French was more like that. One of the things I love about Americans is patriotism. I love this, to me, this flag is so American. It's so, you think you got us down? This is our flag of freedom, and and this is it flying high, and I mean, I got the passport to prove that I'm Canadian, but in that moment, in that basement, the man told a story, and spontaneously, everybody there, whoa, rah, 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 hoo-ah, That moment I was an American, but I also thought, this is us. This is the church of Jesus Christ. And I want to say to somebody here today, and I want to say to this church, the enemy you might have thought that the enemy deactivated you, that the church is deactivated, that you're out of commission, that you're out of business, that it's too much, we've lost too much. God says, no, I take broken pieces, broken lives, hurt people, and I bring them together under the Prince of Peace, the Prince of Shalom, and I declare my glory. Say yes, please. Can you handle me 3 more minutes? Say yes if you have faith. 3 more minutes. All the others, I'll pray for you. It won't be long. You're going to go watch a football game for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. Some of you are going to watch 2 football games today. Bear 5 minutes with me. I was preaching pastors' conferences in Canada for the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. They're all pastors. 1,000 pastors came together. And I was doing it in different areas, different cities. But there, 95% or 98% of them were evangelical, beautiful men of God, women of God, but from a non-charismatic background. And they were just beautiful people, but they had never invited what they call a Pentecostal or charismatic pastor. And I could feel they were nervous. Somebody invited me, and when the guy introduced me, he was almost doing like radio stations when they go, the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the... It was that kind of thing. He was actually naming the guy who invited me to try to say it wasn't me who got him. I don't know what they thought I was going to do. I don't know what they were afraid of. So I really felt to speak on Isaiah where he says, the flame that is still flickering I will not put out, and the broken reed I will not throw away. I start to speak on that. I will fix the broken reed, says the Lord, until music is heard again. I will heal, and I will kindle and breathe and feed the flame of your life, your heart, your passion, your ministry, your calling, until you burn again. He doesn't throw people away. There was a Salvation Army pastor that came in, and I didn't know anything about him. But a few years before, there was a split in his church. They had built the church, and God was using them. And there was such a horrible split in the church. And it was so ugly, and it was so hurtful. And his wife was sinking into a depression. But his daughter, who was a teenager who saw all this, was loving God and serving passionately in the church. When she saw all this, and I've talked to her since, she says, when I saw all these Christians that knew God for so long act that way, and be so mean-spirited, and be so cutting, and be so bitter and unforgiving, and speak such horror about her parents and about the whole situation, that she drifted away. It's not an excuse. Her eyes should have been on Christ, but she was 18, 19, and she started drifting away into the absolute horror of her parents. She started using and fell into an addiction. She ran away. She became a runaway. And they didn't know where she was. For over a year, didn't know where she was in the country until they got a call from the other end of Canada. Canada is very vast. And this was like 1,000 miles away in the big city of Vancouver. And the cops called and says, we arrested your daughter for solicitation, prostitution in crack apartments and all that. So they flew to go and get her. And by the time they got there, they had let her go. So can you imagine, this is a pastor and his wife, and he went for 3-4 days on the street corner looking at her from midnight to 3 in the morning to try to see, praying that she would show up so they could grab her, but that she didn't come back. So when they came back home, it was just too much. There was too much loss. He's a Gideon. He's in the cave, wine press, and why and how and where, and too much. So he wrote a letter of resignation, and thank God for Spirit-filled. God is our peace, leading of the Holy Spirit, elders, because one of the elders told him, before you resign, we don't accept your resignation, but before you go, you want to resign, go to this conference. We feel led to pay this conference for you. We're going to pay a few days, you're going to get some rest. Go to the conference, maybe God will speak to you. So he didn't really want to come, but they were so kind to him. So he came, and he came in this service, and he sat after the worship, everything, and he sat in the back while I'm speaking about the broken reed and he will not throw away the flickering flame. And in the middle of that portion, which was very unusual, but not prepared at all, but I just started weeping, and I said, it's even somebody here that you've actually written your letter of resignation to your soul. And God says no, and he was so pure, so also not used to gifts of the Spirit or that type of, it was so precious. I haven't seen that many times in my own ministry. When I said that, there's somebody here, he actually reached out in his briefcase in front of everybody, stood up, and he said, it's me. It's so beautiful. It's me. I wanted to resign. I'm at the end of my rope, and I'm a broken reed, and everybody was like, whoa, you know. So I said, hey brother, I'm almost done. Just you'll come up in a minute, and we'll pray with you. So I finished the message, and I called them to come, and a lot of the pastors came and their wives. I came to pray with him and his wife, and I put my arms around them, started to pray over them. And the Bible says, you understand that at this point, it's not a manual, it's not a technique, it's not new paradigm, it's not a governmental organizational change, it's not, you need to have the Spirit of God, the Jehovah Shalom that comes in at the place of hurt and does something that is supernatural. Say yes, please. So I'm praying with them and praying in the Spirit, for when we know not how to pray, the Spirit make an intercession with groanings that cannot be uttered. And the words that came out of my mouth in their language, in English, it wasn't a usual prayer, but I started to say, hope was gone, but hope will be back. Hope was gone, but hope will be back. And when I said that, the mother crashed to the floor. So I knelt with her, and he came down, and I'm holding them, and I didn't know anything about anything of the story that I'm telling you now. They told me after. And then through their tears, the dad starts to say, our daughter left and all that. And he says, my daughter's name is Hope. She's called Hope. Hope was gone, and hope will be back. So I said, well, brother, God's speaking to us. Come on. So we stood up and prayed, wherever she is, bring her back. Oh, God, and I pray for them now, your peace. Prince of Peace, come do a work in their life, the work of your Spirit. You understand that it's not passive, it's active. It's not yesterday or tomorrow. It's right now. And it's certainly not natural. It's supernatural by the peace and the presence of God. A year later, I kept in touch with them, and he said in the weeks, that months that followed, he was emailing me, and he says, I tore up the resignation. God is with us, and he's going to God, and God is strengthening him. And a year later, I'm preaching in the same conference, different city, and I see him come in with his wife, with his beautiful tall girl, comes with all in Salvation Army uniform. They came in. And about a month or a month and a half after the conference, his daughter Hope came back. She didn't only come back, she came back to God. She came back to repentance. She came back to service in the church. And this is years ago. This summer, they came to church during the vacation, came to a service. He's there, his wife is there, Hope is there, her husband, baby in their arm, all serving God together. Hope was gone. I want to say to somebody here, you have not been deactivated. This church has not been deactivated. Hope might have been gone, but hope is back in the presence of Christ. Would you do this? You're gonna shout and applaud and go crazy over the Broncos, and that's fine. But this afternoon, can we stand and can you give God an ovation? Can you give him a shout? Come on. Come on, you can do it. Say, oh God, I'm coming to you. I want you to bow your heads with me. I want to announce that there's a new day dawning. We're going to sing, bless the Lord, O my soul. Announcing a new day, whatever may come. While I was praying for this message, and I believe that Adam speaking it last week and this week, confirming it, that him that has an ear, hear what the Spirit is saying to the Church of the Springs, Colorado Springs, in October 2015. Crucial moment in the history of this church, this body of believers, and in your life. And while I was praying for this message, this is not a legalistic thing. This is not, you don't have to. We had an amazing moment in the first service. I had this picture in my mind as I was walking and praying the Spirit for this morning. I had this picture, this moment of the whole church coming together in prayer at the end, together, coming together, calling on God. In a moment of unity, in a moment of forgiveness, in a moment of release. The restorations of tomorrow depend on our release and our response today. So if you're here today and you say, yes, I had been focusing on the past or the future, and I will activate, I hear the voice of God that says, go now, and the strength that I will give you now. And I want to activate my love, my forgiveness, my faith now. You're here and you say, I've been facing something that was so huge that I couldn't see anything else. When I thought I was building up, we were building up, I had seen as if the enemy had come to steal it. But today I'm coming to God. It's not by yesterday or tomorrow, it's today. And I'm coming and I need the Prince of Peace. I will not be able to bring peace to my family, bring peace to the situation until I walk in that peace, that shalom, that supernatural. Hope was gone, but hope. I am a piece of a tattered flag. I thought the enemy had said, you're deactivated. But God is bringing me back with me, my brothers, my sister, here in the Springs. And the breath of His Spirit and the wind of His Spirit is going to blow. And we're going to become a flag that announces freedom and liberty and faith in Christ. So today, if you would allow me, if you feel open to do this, I asked in the first service and everybody just came. I would like to ask you, I had this picture of us praying together. Can I ask you to leave your seat, everybody, and to come here in the front to say, we're coming together. This is a moment for the church. We're coming together. Would you come close here in the front? From all over the place, families, husband and wives, grabbing each other's hands. And when you come here, come close so everybody can come behind you. Thank you. I see young people, I see children. They need for the adults to be examples, to be models of forgiveness and love and maturity and peace and faith. I see sons, I see daughters, I see parents, I see grandparents, sons in the faith, mothers in the faith, brothers and sisters. Would you come from all over? This is the people of the Springs Church. Would you come? And as you come, would you begin out loud to speak to God? Would you say, oh God, you're coming with me, I'm coming with you. Oh God, fill me with your Spirit. Oh God, open my eyes to see you. Oh God, I'm not deactivated, I'm activated by you. Oh God, I will serve today, love today, believe today. Oh God, I want to understand, but I also want, especially beyond all, I want to fulfill your call on my life. I want to be an influence of peace and of love and of faith and of joy and of encouragement in this body. Oh God, fill us in that.